Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're happy to have you here today. We're going to start in about a minute while people join us. Welcome, everyone. About 20 seconds and I'm going to get started so we have time for Susan and all of the great content today. All right, great. I want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end. So welcome, everyone. I'm Rachel Ross, Senior Director of Grants and Programs at the Foundation for Financial Planning. We're so pleased to be here today for this webinar with Susan Bradley on applying the Financial Transitionist model to pro bono financial planning. This webinar and others in the series are eligible for CFP and AFC continuing education credit. We submit the CE credit to the CFP board, and the AFCs in the audience will need to submit to AFCP themselves. I'll let you know the code for that at the end of the webinar, and we'll also email it out after. So before I introduce our speaker, I'd love to spend a few minutes sharing some information with you about the work that FFP does to expand access to pro bono financial planning for people in crisis or need. As you all know, more than half of Americans don't have savings to cover a $1,000 unexpected expense. So FFP works to provide access to pro bono financial planning to improve the financial lives of others. We work in a number of ways. We provide grants to nonprofits to develop and grow pro bono programs. We connect volunteer financial planners to pro bono opportunities. We develop signature programs with national reach. We raise awareness of the importance and impact of pro bono service, and we offer free pro bono training and resources for volunteers. We work with a diversity of organizations serving a variety of populations, people facing serious illness, victims of natural disaster, women, members of the military, pro bono financial planners, financial coaches. Nonprofits can really make a true impact on the financial lives of others. FFP offers a number of resources to support pro bono financial planning, both for nonprofit organizations and CFP professional volunteers, and all of those adjacent to those groups. We provide a pro bono financial planning volunteer training, which is a free 50-minute online module that helps financial planners understand the basics of how to provide pro bono service. We provide workshops, webinars, user-friendly disclosures like sample letter of engagements and more. We offer Pro Bono Planner Match, which is the first of its kind platform connecting CFP professionals with nonprofits serving low-income families. And if anyone wants a walkthrough of that platform, please be in touch and we'll be happy to speak with you. We offer E&O liability insurance, which is complimentary for CFP professionals who connect with pro bono opportunities through probonoplannermatch.org or volunteer with any of our grantees. We encourage you to check out our website if you represent a nonprofit or if you're a CFP professional and others to learn more about the resources that we provide. Please get involved in the pro bono movement. Register on Pro Bono Planner Match. Register for our newsletter to stay up to date. And then, of course, support us with a multi-year pledge or gift so we can increase our impact and serve more people. Please reach out and contact us, the CEO, John, myself, with any questions regarding grants or programs, or our Vice President of Development, Katie Hammer. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Susan Bradley here today. We're so thrilled to have her today to present applying the Financial financial transitionist model, pro bono financial planning, establishing alignment, trust, and communication with clients facing life disrupting events. Susan is the founder of Sudden Money Institute, which began 22 years ago as a community of practice seeking to better serve their financial planning clients by developing processes and tools for the personal side of money and for clients going through transitions. Susan served on the FPA's board of directors, and she currently sits on the National Football League's Players Association's Financial Education Advisory Board. She's the Dean of Transitions for the Council of Deans of the Purposeful Planning Institute, and she's heard and seen frequently on national media. We're so pleased to have her today. Please write your questions in the Q&A tool on your screen. Try not to include them in the chat. We'll go through the Q&A at the end. And welcome, Susan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, if I can get permission. And I have to say, it's so fabulous to be part of this group. This is really one of the shining lights of the financial planning profession worldwide. And as I saw you read off all of the details, it's so impressive how far this has come, this foundation from, I think it goes back over 20 years now. So it's a pleasure and it's an honor, and it's also a challenge. So y'all have to realize that what we're talking about today and what I'm sharing with you today is really designed for full-on financial planning engagements where you have a long discovery process, you have onboarding, you have the planning, that you have the implementation of the plan, you have wealth management that follows that until life gets disrupted, and then you go into transition mode again. So that's like big stuff. And what you're dealing with is people who don't have that kind of capacity to be with you, and you don't have that capacity to be with them. And it's a high human kind of thing that you're doing to try and lean into it. But there's a lot going on. Maybe this maybe longer than ever title that you see on the screen is an indication of how much is going on. But I'm going to try and bring us to a balcony so you get sort of a big picture of what we've learned in our 25 years in doing this work, that I'm trying to encapsulate it so that it's a good takeaway for you. But we'll go to a balcony and then we'll go to some details. So let's start with the obvious, that change is life. That's just the way it is. Life is a sequence of change, but sometimes there's transitions that happen after the change. So it kind of breaks down like this. We've been changing since the day we were born. That's what life is. And it's interesting, in our culture, we've never really been taught how to do change. You were just expected, think from childhood on forward, you were expected to deal with whatever life gives to you, whatever your age and stages, whatever the disruption is, and then you take care of the details and you get back on track. You kind of like suck it up and get going. And it's a very Western approach, very modern approach. The ancients had big traditions around this. We don't have that. But what we really miss, our real blind spot, is that when the change happens, life gets disrupted. I'm talking about the way life works, routines. I'm talking about responsibilities, new choices, all of that. When life is moving from the way it was to the way it will be, there's a movement. It's called a transit from the way life used to be to the way life will be. So it's kind of a big deal because stakes are high. And the choices that we humans make when we're in these flux moments, these pivot times, really shape the next part of our life. And it goes on like that over and over again. So the research says that we humans in our Western culture, just think US, because that's really where this research comes from, have pretty much over 50 shifts and changes in our life transition events, minor things. And then what Bruce Feiler calls the life quakes. There's 5 or 6 of them that really throw us off one track, and we have to find a new track. Sometimes we have to build a new track. And those are the big events that really show up for us in the financial planning profession. And there's a whole range of them. They sound very different from an inheritance to the death of a loved one, or maybe the divorce, or maybe a big drop in net worth. There's all kinds of things that happen, but it's really pretty universal. There's a human response. So what we tried to do at our institute is create process based on reoccurring challenges that we see with people in all kinds of life events. We have a great pool of collaboration and collective best practices over the years. So we build out process, or we get some science to understand, and then we create a protocol. So everything we do has to be universal, practical, and repeatable. And it works really, really well in financial planning. Our challenge today is talking about making it work as well in the pro bono world. So before I go much further, we have a poll to take. I thought it would be good for all of us to understand who is gathered today. So we have 3 polling questions and that Rachel's going to put up for us. And I'd like you to if you can't see them, I think there's a way you can let Rachel know. But if you would just answer these 3 questions, you can scroll down, and we'll all see the final tally. I think there are more choices to, yeah. If you make sure that you scroll up, because there are more choices to question 1, it starts with divorce. And we're talking about your pro bono clients, not your financial planning clients. Excuse me. Couldn't get the mute. Looks like we have results coming in. Okay, so it's a pretty good range. Natural disaster is the only one that's under 10%. Job loss is more than half. Divorce, family, loss of family. Okay, let's look at number 2. Meeting time. Yeah, less than 4 meetings, that would be very rare. 12 meetings, that must be special circumstances. But the bulk of people with us today have very few meetings, 1, 2, and 3. In fact, it's more like 1 and 2. That's where the higher numbers are. That's really challenging when you think about how long it takes to get to know a client that's going through a life disruption. To think that you could complete the work that you would like to do for someone in that period of time, it's pretty remarkable. So almost nobody is low stress in the people that you serve. Majority are high and moderate. So what's important about that is that the stress level, it's just a human thing. The stress level that we have, as it goes up, it impacts not just the way we breathe and our blood pressure, but the way our brain works. And there's a brain hijack or amygdala hijack. And some people say their brain is offline. They say that they're fogged over, they're numb. There are lots of different words for it. And it isn't just for an hour or an afternoon, it's a continuum. So that's what makes it stress and debilitating. So you're asking people or yourself when you're in one of these life disrupting moments or events. It's certainly not a moment. You're asking people to make their best executive decisions for their life and the people in their life. It's really a tough setup. We weren't really trained how to manage change. We were just going to take care of things, as I said, suck it up, get back on track. But with transitions, when life is really broken apart and disrupted, the stress level is very high. The adjustment period is really long, and stress plays a very big part of this. So hence we need some tools and skills, and hopefully I can deliver some of that today. These are 4 or 3 things that we find that clients always need. There is a lot written about this in our industry press as well. And it can get boiled down to clarity, confidence, and control. That's a big deal for all clients all the time. And it's a challenge for pretty much all clients all the time. It requires skill and process on your side, on the human end of things, as well as expertise. So we're going to talk about how to increase these 3: clarity, confidence, and a sense of control or agency over one's life. How you can help your pro bono people have more of these 3. Maybe you get to full clarity, confidence, and control. And if you do, man, I want to hear about that one, because that would be unusual. Usually it's a progression in the right direction. So one of the ways you can help people normalize their experience, and by the way, when we say normalizing, the neurological impact of normalizing, and you've probably seen it yourself at times when something seems really wrong and you find out that it's really normal and that you can handle it, you can feel your body relax. Well, when you normalize for someone in transition, the fact that there's probably some stages that they'll go through and that it's a process, that they're not stuck in one place, and that it's just very human to have some challenges along the way, that normalizes it. And that's, you can build that into your conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a side conversation with a whole bunch of science. I think you already know that. You just use terms that will help people feel that it's okay, that they feel the way they feel, that they're struggling on whatever it is, that happens to many people, and that you can help them with it. So this is, if you were to do this kind of a image for people and use these 4 circles that we have. The anticipation is a preparation time, and there's active things you can do to help people be prepared for. Second stage, ending, that's when the event happens, no going back. You work with a lot of pro bono people who have had stuff happen or choices that they've made, and now they're trying to figure out what to do with it. So the ending stage usually is in financial planning. It's a pretty big, detailed kind of thing. You only have 2, maybe 3 meetings with people. Whether you really get them right at the ending stage, my guess would be is that you probably see more people, maybe some anticipation. Most people are probably in ending needing to make choices and decisions, or to avoid choices. They're needing to find their clarity, their confidence to make choices. But remember that all of these choices, they layer up, and they have consequences. They have the tendency to shape the next great chapter of someone's life, or not, if that's not what they're willing to do, to lean on. So we're really asking, or I'm wondering actually, how, as a pro bono advisor, how you can lean in. I'm going to cough for a second. Thank you. How you can lean in such a concentrated period of time with someone that you probably have not known before and will not know long term. So it's kind of a time from a transitionist. I think I see everything as a transitionist. I can't help myself. But when our certified financial transitionists, the planners that we work with, they can zero right in on the human dynamics of these 4 stages. And what I'm trying to communicate today is that with just a few tools that we're getting to, you can help people increase their cognitive functionality. You can lower their stress level a little bit with some conversation, some visuals, and some process. And what we're really looking for right now is for me to give you some takeaways that you can give to your client as a takeaway so that they have a way to either recapture some of their clarity and their confidence, or to enhance it after they've seen you. So that's kind of a big ask, but why not? Let's give it a try. By the way, let me just complete this from ending, which is where I think many people are with you. Then there's this passage. There's this adaptation or adjustment, because change happens. Change is more situational, and transitions are the result of that situation. From our experience with our planners around the world, we work in 5 continents, so we see this consistently. The passage stage is the longest. That's why it's bigger there. It subliminally communicates that it's longer and more is going on there. And that's where the blind spots really show up. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some focus on the things to do, avoid the possibilities, the maybe the idea of rethinking something, not going too fast, all of that is packed in, because your pro bono clients are shaping their life day by day, just like we all do when we go through these transitions. And their times with you are focused probably a lot on the technical that they need to know about, but also they're showing up as a human being, just doing the best they can at a time when stakes are high. So I applaud you for leaning into this. And I don't mean to make this hairy scary and say, boy, this is, your chance of success here are really low and go for it anyway. That's not what I'm saying. I think your chance of success are increasing all the time as your human side gets you get tools and skill and confidence on the human side. You blend it into the technical, and I think the outcome will be measurable. I certainly hope so for you and for your clients. The new normal is really out of the range of what you would be doing probably in pro bono. It's a time when we look back and see what a client or what our best process is when we're going through transition. So we start to learn about the how we personally manage things. What's our best play when life is changing? That's not your world for now. I think you're right here where the yellow and orange is. And I wanted to mention the power of yet. It's one of these things that you can build into your conversation. If you can just help someone understand that they're not where they want to be, you'll probably have people that are stressed about that are confused on how they're going to get there, wonder if they're ever going to get there. And if you can just tell them that they're in a process and they're not there yet. They're not at this next stage yet. It's Dr. Carol Dweck's work out of Harvard and Stanford. And if you just a quick that you can do to remind yourself how powerful it is to say to someone, yes, I understand it's hard, but you're just not there yet. It's incredible what that does to the way the brain functions and the physiology. It has a tendency to lower stress on the spot. Now, it might not keep the stress level down, but if you can encourage people that they're in a process and they're not there yet, you may have given them a fabulous gift. If you just look up the power of yet, just Google it and you'll find some really cool stuff that she has done. And I've never met her, of course, but she's contributed a lot to our work. So the next thing that we tend to look at here is we if you're with clients, there's a whole conversation about the two sides of money. I don't think that's where you are right now. I think where you are when you're working with pro bono people is more about understanding how they're showing up. What are their strengths or struggles right then? Help them identify so they know what they are. By all means, if it is appropriate to talk about the two sides of money, absolutely go there. I'm not saying avoid it. I'm just thinking your time is really tight with these people. So what could really work is these characteristics on the lower half of the slide here. They're divided into flow and into struggle. I've given you a takeaway as part of the materials here that has a list of these so that you can remember what we're doing here. And obviously flow looks like positive and struggle tends to be negative. The idea is, again, we want to normalize. So if we were showing this to somebody, I would say, we all have our own way of responding to change and disruption. It's a pretty big deal, and I would say take a look at these different common responses and tell me what looks familiar, and then tell me more. Excuse me. Okay, that's not fun to be sneezing in the middle of this. So again, I apologize. I guess I'm getting some allergies here in Florida, whatever. The main thing is when you look at these characteristics, you can see struggle traits would inhibit the capacity to make good decisions and would probably be connected to stress. And it would probably affect relationships and the ability to implement. Flow looks like they're more ready to go. Readiness is a big question that you have when you work with people in transition and disruption. But for today, for what you need with this, I would think showing people some kind of list like this, or if you want, you can write to me and we'll send you the transition journal that has a lot of these listed in it. And it's just a page and it's overkill for what we were doing today. So just if this is important to you, let me know, I'll give you more. But the point is have somebody tell you how they're feeling, what's going on, and then don't just take their words and assume you know what they're saying. Ask for more, have a conversation about it. And then from there, I think you can also get into some pretty instructive, informing, what we call structured conversation. We use this as a conversation quadrant, and pretty easy to do. If I'm envisioning you working with a client, if you have a piece of paper, it's always good to have some blank paper around too. So just draw on it. Just draw a big square divided into the four quadrants, and start the structure of a pretty internal, some people would say intimate or personal, but very human kind of conversation to have with people. And the reason that we do the four is because it keeps you on one topic at a time, and one topic then goes to the next. They flow easily when you get this quadrant idea going, and one builds on the other. The way we were trained, I've been trained by school teachers and others to help me with this work. And the information I've gotten and that works for us is to go in a clockwise direction, starting with the upper left. So that's why I numbered them. You wouldn't necessarily number them with a client, but you're asking, what does it feel like now? So if you did the behaviors, this would be a good lead in, or if you didn't do the behaviors, just how is it going today? What does it feel like now? You probably have a category of an idea that is important to them, that's happening to them, but don't assume that because they have this going on that you know how they feel. So check in with them. You can check in with sleeping and all that, but don't even categorize it like that. We found to just keep it open-ended. And then the second question about what is changing is interesting because we see change. We usually put it in the box with the label divorce, cancer. Someone's a vet, someone has lost their job, someone is buying a house for the first time. And particularly with our professional backgrounds, I'm also a CFP, with our backgrounds, we have a tendency to put them in what is maybe like our knowing box. I know what people like you in this do, feel, and want. Let somebody else tell you. And the change that we're looking here, we're looking for what is the ripple effect. There's an event with a name, but what has that done? How does that change where you live? How does that change your daily routine? Has it changed relationships? Rather than asking the questions, I would let somebody start and then let them start to discover. So it's not a check the box, it's an open-ended conversation about all the changes that are happening with someone. Some may be good, some may be bad. It's their story. So I would be making a few notes as I did this. So I would have the box in front of me and I would say, is it okay if I just write a couple words down? By the way, when you write words down in an exercise like this, you invite co-creation, which is part of the idea of control or agency. Someone is telling you things that are very true for them at that time, that day, and you're trying to capture some of it with not longhand, just a few words. The cool thing is they see that and you can say, did I get it right? Is that the right word to use? In that kind of an exchange, you're inviting someone to continue thinking rather than got it. Okay, let's move on. This can be very, very powerful. Number 3 is what needs to be protected. The way that comes up, we were just talking about this the other day with our mastery group. Somebody said they feel a little awkward saying what needs to be protected. So that's kind of like the jargony or formalized version of this, but I would say with all that's going on in your life and the kind of things that you have ahead of you, there's just a ton of stuff. Help me understand, what do you want to make sure is protected while all that's going on? What is it that you would look back on at the end of a day or a week or a lot of stuff happening and know that that one thing is being taken care of, or that you haven't lost sight of it? People say things like my marriage, my health, my job. Um, you're looking for those 1 or 2 things that really are almost sacred to a person. That's a heck of an exchange to have with someone. And it's very informative for you when you're going to give them some advice. They may surprise you in what they really care the most about. And number 4 is what difference would it make if you get whatever you're going through, if you get it right? What does the other side of this look like? Most people are focused on what's wrong and what is challenging right now. And I'm not saying to dismiss that at all, but it sometimes helps to see that, one, there is another side and there's a difference. Maybe it's about relationships, and maybe it's about the capacity to live this way or that way. Another way of saying is, what difference would it make if you got this wrong? I think in your situation, there's so much heft and drama sometimes that it's easy to focus on what's wrong and what bad things could happen. So this might be an opportunity to shift to the positive, which actually does shift the way your mind and body work, all of us. So this person that you're working with, it gives them a little bit of relief, like a little quick glimmer. It's Deb Dana's work in Glimmers, about how that kind of shifts a little bit. Something like that. If somebody is stuck, by the way, on what is wrong and what is awful and why they can't see anything positive, I would never negate somebody and tell them that they're wrong about that. But sometimes it's interesting. You got to be careful with when you use this, but it's powerful. You could say to them, what would the opposite of that look like? I just wonder. What would the opposite? You could say feel like or look like. And again, it shifts the way the brain is working. It shifts from one hemisphere to the other. It shifts from one part of the brain to the other. And, some people might just say, I have no idea. I can't think of that. And that's okay. But they take that question away with them. They might enjoy thinking about that later on. So this is a conversation quadrant, and one of the one pagers that we gave you to as a result of attending this, and thank you, by the way, for the time that you're giving us today. We have this. I'm envisioning you would have some notes in each of the quadrant. And then underneath is more of an action plan. That's where you get the human overview and the connection, and you build a little trust. They have some agency. They have a little more confidence knowing that you know more about them. So maybe you can help them more. And they have a little bit more clarity, probably not a whole lot with this, but they know themselves a little bit better and they've been heard. So you get that. This might take you I would say this is an easy 10-minute conversation. So time yourself a little bit with that. And then you get into, so what is next? What do we do next? So remember, when we get to this, this is all about asking, listening, heard, valued, and understood. And these two down here are for discovery and clarity and shared language. That's why you're taking some notes there. Another way to do it is to start with what needs to be protected right now. What are the choices that you see or decisions? What are the consequences, and then priorities? And I'll show you the now, soon, and later in a second. So all I'm saying to you here is that you can create a quadrant in many different ways. The quadrants are, I have found, by the way, that 4, that's why it's a quadrant instead of a triangle. You could do that, try it. The idea is more that you have a visual, you have short questions. You might even just put the word protected and then choices and consequences and priorities. So a way for, you're having a conversation with someone, you're meeting them heart to heart, eyeball to eyeball, as much as you can. And then you're directing your attention to them, and then you're directing both your attention to this written thing, this visual. That's really a big deal. The talking, unless someone is an auditory learner, and there's that's a low percentage of us. Most of us are visuals. Most of us are actually combinations. When you're looking at, or you're intending to help someone take probably a pretty important step to move through their navigation, there are some people say the wilderness, you're moving through what life has given to them. When you're just talking about it, it's easy for things to evaporate, and then you end up with maybe some forms or some way of a checklist for someone. This process of having a conversation with a visual that is structured as opposed to unstructured, structured here, then what happens is you hold attention longer. There's different research on visual communication and learning. One indicates that using something visual like this, you increase recall by about 600%. That's the science of visual data. And it's meant for big data, but we have found it to be the idea of pulling attention in. And then you give this, the page that I give you as part of this, you give it as a takeaway is what's very cool about this. It enhances the connectivity, and it lets what you're trying to help them with, the information you're helps them own it a little bit more. They have more recall, and it makes more sense. And they've co-created because their words are on this page. So I showed on that one this now, soon, and later. And this is what we call our decision-free zone. This is the first tool that I ever created, and that was back in the 90s when I was starting to write the Sudden Money book. I could see decision-making was the hardest part when I looked at people in financial change. So we worked on this, and it broke the decision-making process into categories based on urgency and timelines. So a now is what is essential, what needs immediate attention. Some of your people, depends upon the event that they're dealing with, they'll have some really hard deadlines that if they miss this, then there's no going back. They don't get something, they don't avoid something. So sometimes you have timelines that are dictated from the outside. Sometimes it's internal. It's a relationship thing. They have to clear this up in order to move something else forward. So the idea with this is the things that you would really regret if you didn't get them done in a timely manner. This and you probably wouldn't have a do-over with that. It's usually a fairly short list. Um, if it's long, you could make the list, but then just highlight the most important. The idea here is to have 2 or 3 things on the now list and everything else on the important but not urgent. So you're just going to have to, if you want to use this, you'll have to figure it out as you go along with the people that you're working with. But what Dr. Moira Summers tells us about this has a calming influence on the individual and increases the capacity to make good decisions. So you just think of turning down the volume, turning down the noise, and just look at 1 or 2 things. Now, this might not be so easy in the pro bono world. In the financial planning world, you can say, we're going to get these 2 things done because they are the most urgent. And then maybe you have a secondary urgent list, but your staff, your team, your practice management is built to follow up. You might not have that with a pro bono. So if you can make this really clear, that helps. What I found was that people, and I'm talking really high net worth, corporate C-suite kind of people, as well as all the people in the pro bono world, right straight across the board. I've been doing this since 1995. What I find is people can use those terms now, soon, and later. And if you can give them that structure, again, there's some structure, and you have a visual, and I have that in one of the handouts I gave you. So you can talk to them about now and soon, and it should have meaning. So when they want to get something done that's on the soon list, or maybe on the later, which is usually a couple years down the road until you have more information and more life around whatever's happening. When they want something there, you can say, yes, you're not there yet, Dweck's work. You're not there yet. Now we're at this now or soon. So you have shared process and vocabulary. What happens in real life is that soon is longer. That's where a lot of the financial planning is, things like that. As things get done on the now list, then what's on the soon list starts to move up. So it's your way of prioritizing. But yeah, I've had people all over. Just someone who read the book, they would call and say, I just want to talk to somebody about my decision-free zone. I'm in that soon thing. So if you can get comfortable with this vocabulary yourself, you have to be comfortable with that. It's something that I find translates beautifully. So you might find, as you implement the idea, making this more visually attractive helps. what I found I learned from a school teacher, something that we call one pagers that all the neuropsych people have confirmed. But a school teacher said to me, I have a classroom. I have a three-headed classroom. My kids are visual, kinesthetic, auditory learners. I don't know who's what. So everything I do has to be appealing to all three learning types. Now, there's many other learning types. That's not what we're talking about today. This is a school teacher, very practical. And one of the things she taught us is to use color and is to make it very simple. There's no other explanation here, just now, soon, and now urgent, soon, important, later, not now. Something simple like that is attractive for people, something that they can take with them or download if you're doing things virtually. Some kind of takeaway ownership is important. So this is just the decision-free zone in that format. This is another way of looking at it. What we're talking about here is we're using that one pager concept. And what the school teachers told me was to use color, shapes, and arrows. So it directs someone's attention and just limit the copy. So what happens, I think, in the pro bono world from my past experience is that people come to you and they have choices, they have decisions, they have something that needs to get tended to. Sometimes it's not just one thing, or one thing is primary, but then it influences the other. That's that ripple effect. So this is just one way to map it out. I know you've got lots of software, you can do different things with it, but the concept here is to use color and shapes. So we've got shapes here, we've got arrows, and the choices in purple are also connected to the expected or intended outcome. So you have a choice here, and this is what you want to get done. A pro bono person probably doesn't have all the iterations for this, so you're keeping it super simple if you wanted to give somebody an overview to take home. It's just an example of doing that. So let's see, time-wise, I think we're good. This is what I'd like you to remember about using the visuals and the process that I'm trying to share with you today. This is, and what I'm sharing with you right now is, it absolutely is universal from what I have seen. There's all kinds of variations with this. You know, this is not an algorithm, and there isn't like a textbook of all these one pagers and you just go through it and choose. You doing them for someone helps you also focus and connect with them. So visuals over text. There is other research that says that we absorb information, I don't know what it was, it's like 50,000 times faster with a visual than with text. So whatever visual you can give someone without oversimplifying and missing something important, use visual. You can always have another page with it that has text that might be required. So I'm not saying don't give them that, but when you're in meetings and they're thinking about it after a meeting, the visual is probably where to go. The next is personalized advice over general. So when you're meeting with someone on a pro bono basis, what I have found is it's really good to avoid the idea, I don't think you would say this out loud, but people like you have, people in your circumstances, oh, everyone in this group has. The idea is to make it relevant, the advice you're giving, make it personal. That's why if you know what they're protecting and you know what they're feeling and you know what they see as changing, you can use their vocabulary and what's important to them in the advice or the recommendations that you give them. So it's relevant. We find that soft tone is important. What happens with a lot of experts and not just financial planners is when you lose a little confidence or things are getting a little tough or someone's asking the same question multiple times, which always happens when you have a drop or always can happen when you have a drop in cognitive capacity, there's a tendency, even without knowing it, that you raise your voice a little bit. And then again, you raise the voice a little bit. And what happens is people, what we have as feedback is it feels like you're being reprimanded, or it feels like you're being sold something. So there is a natural tendency to pull back when the tone of voice or the volume is such that it sort of triggers a pushback. So think about that as maybe just give yourself a reminder of that. The bullet points, the majority of people that we talk to, we do this thing called the communication preference, where we ask people to look at, we have 17 descriptors about what works for them in a meeting. How do they like to be prepared for a meeting, be in a meeting, follow up, what doesn't work, what works. So it's a longer process. It's more than what you want for this time. And I don't think it really works that well in pro bono unless you're one of the people that has 5 meetings. Maybe you would. But anyway, what we find is that frequently people like to see recommendations or steps in some kind of simple, orderly way. Bullet points is a good default for that. Works for steps as well as options. The action list needs to go into chunks. We find that in all things, professional athletes need to see it in chunks. They're really smart people. They're coachable. They have great memory. They have great dedication, but they need to have some kind of small steps. Small steps also encourages confidence. You'll see with your widow clients or divorced clients when they're in the overwhelm and they don't think they're ever going to get their brain back. That's one of the scariest parts. That can even happen, by the way, with people who sell their business and successfully sell their business. They go into a different way of brain and body working, and they're frequently concerned that it's never going to get better. They're never going to get out and be something else. So small steps build confidence one at a time. And you can remind people that they did that. You can do this, you did that. It's the same thing. It probably doesn't feel good, but you can do this. And this is how, why, and like that. Validation, understanding, and empathy. It goes so far. It goes so far. I know you probably don't have time to hear someone's whole life story. They may want to tell you. I don't know. You'll see how that goes. But just even understanding yourself, the different traits that I showed you on the slide before that were broken into flow and struggle, just understanding those and having some awareness that, it's good to hold people in the position of being a high human, doing the best they can in pretty rough times. Transitions don't usually bring out the best in us all the time. It can be pretty rough. So letting people off the hook a little bit and understanding that they are struggling. And then these take homes, these one pagers, as I showed you, and I think I gave you another one that we use to organize when an event has disrupted most of life. It has what are the things that you need to remember around medical or health, as well as insurance and family. Not that you're going to do all of this, but if you're in a pro bono situation, you might be in a position to tell people 2 things they need to know about these different categories, or even that the categories exist and they're important. So these take homes, we spend one of our whole modules. We do 12-month training with 6 modules, and one module is really dedicated to the one pagers. So when you do that with someone pro bono or client, keep it simple. Try it beforehand. If you have a client that's coming in or pro bono, what might the one pager look like? And don't get married to it because it can change. Okay, we're getting close to the time to start to take some questions. This is the thank you slide and how to and get a hold if you want to have any questions about something, you have a case, email me or get in touch and I'd be happy to follow up. So shall I just cut the slides and we'll open up, Rachel?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Good.
So if anyone has questions, you can put them in the Q&A at the bottom or the top of your screen. And Susan, thank you so much. That was so relevant, especially the exercises and the handouts you're going to be sending. And I just felt like it was so applicable to everyday life in addition to financial guidance and advice. So
You know
thank
what?
you so much.
You are so right, Rachel. What we advocate for CEFTs, we take our own medicine. I was doing my own decision-free zone just last night because I was overwhelmed with holiday and travel and all of that. This stuff works. Try it on yourself and then you'll build confidence.
Wonderful. I'm going to start with a few questions. Kevin asked, have you found some tools to be more helpful than others for particular circumstances? For example, are there some tools that are more helpful in working with a recent widow versus working with a cancer patient versus working with someone recently laid off?
Yeah, I think there's always that, but you have to remember, we're talking categories here, and we have individuals in each category. Not all widows are the same. Um, when you have someone, which is common with widows in the early stage, feeling numb and really having a tough time processing, wondering if they're ever going to get their brain back. Um, that's a little bit different than a cancer patient who has to be action oriented. A widow can withdraw and come back. The action for so the decision-free zone would work well for a widow, and for a cancer patient, you might have to get a little more detailed with that. Expectations, running through expectations and what do you hope it will look like. Um, a lot of widows just can't answer that in the beginning. When they start to be able to answer that, they're going into their next stage.
Thank you. And then going back to earlier in your presentation where you were talking about the 4 stages, do the yellow circles represent meetings with the pro bono client?
I didn't put it down that way. It could, in fact, be like that. I put it just as a marker in this 4-stage process that really takes maybe 6 years or more. I was thinking pro bono would happen when the most action is going on at the ending stage and maybe beginning of passage. So I meant it in maybe this, maybe that, rather than 2 meetings.
Got it. And then the CFP board has a 6-step process to approaching a client relationship. How might you modify that approach given that most pro bono engagements are just 1 or 2 meetings?
I think it's really challenging because you really, in financial planning, you want to and have a responsibility to really know a lot. I don't know if you have the opportunity to get that kind of depth. I think, I suspect with pro bono, it's situational. They have a named event that's going on, and you've probably been trained by some organization related to the event that would that would tell you what the steps are. So there's definitely modification.
Great. And then one more. How do you feel about pro bono clients maybe being in a decision-free zone of canceling or pushing advisor meetings for solutions back, maybe due to a life change, priority, stress, or confusion?
Um, that's an interesting question because there is something called transition fatigue. And people in high stress events get worn down and they just can't get up in the morning and follow their calendar or their to-do list. This happens with all kinds of clients. So what we need to do is give them very little, and this isn't true for everybody. Some people like to have a long list and they're gunners, and it keeps them off the feeling level and it keeps them on a doing level. That's a different kind of client. But people that are not showing up and not implementing, they're not ready, as opposed to there being bad people. So it's readiness. And I would have discussions about the choices that we're considering or the recommendations, the consequences or the outcomes, and let somebody tell you if they're not ready. Give them permission. And if you're not ready now, how else could we get this done?
Wonderful. So I think we're at time. I wrote in the chat, if you're an AFC, you submit CE credit to AFCP. The code is FFP08. If you're a CFP, we will submit that for you to CFP board. And thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much, Susan. This was great. We have another webinar coming up on January 18th, focused on pro bono financial planning for military personnel, veterans, and their families. So we encourage you to look online and register for that. But thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you all, and thank you for the work you do, the time and the humanity that you offer. It's a beautiful thing. Bye for now, everybody. Happy year end.
Thank you.